Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Natural Food Pantry Education Initiative. Joining me today for a discussion on mitochondrial health for energy and longevity is Dr. Gaetano Morello, naturopathic doctor. Dr. Morello is a licensed naturopathic physician practicing in Vancouver, British Columbia. He is a clinician at the Complex Chronic Disease Program at BC Women's Hospital in Vancouver, treating fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, and chronic Lyme disease. That's a mouthful. He is the first naturopathic physician to hold such a position at a major North American hospital. Wow, what an honor to have you with us today, Dr. Morello. Those are quite complex diseases that you work with.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. I really enjoy discussing my work with everyone, anyone who would listen to some of these important conditions that have unmet needs. They're very difficult to treat, and I think also with the advent of COVID, we have something now called long COVID, and the symptomology is very similar. So it's really given us a whole new perspective and a whole new understanding, because now we're doing so much research in the long COVID area that's helping us with some of these complex diseases as well, understanding them better, but also some of the history that we have with those diseases can help patients with long COVID. So there's been lots going on in the last year and a half, 2 years.
I bet. I can appreciate the work you do. I find the body to be really fascinating. It's so complex and integral, and just the way everything works together, much like the universe does. It's absolutely fascinating. And that leads me into our discussion today. We're going to be talking a little bit about mitochondria. So I'd love for you to explain to the listeners what mitochondria are, what role they play, and how they work.
Yeah, I remember seeing mitochondria in high school in biology class, and we saw a cell with two little mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, right? And in reality, there's actually each one of our muscle cells has 1,500 mitochondria. Actually, 60% of most cells are mitochondrial, the volume. So the way that I explain mitochondria is a little different to my patients, just so we can get an understanding of what they are and what they do. And so when you look at, the most important element in life, is not food and water. And the reason why I say that is because we can go without water, without food. We haven't eaten anything in the last 5 minutes that we've been talking. And we probably won't eat anything until this interview is over, or drink anything. Well, maybe I had a sip of coffee, but my point here is the most important element in life is air. We can't go without air. And what's so important in air is oxygen. And when we look at the consequential effects or side effects of a lack of oxygen, the best example is something that we can all relate to, is stroke victims. And that is a lack of blood flow to a particular area of the brain for a short period of time. And that lack of oxygen for that short period of time in the brain can paralyze an individual. That individual can lose the ability to talk. That individual can die, which begs the question, what is oxygen doing that renders it so critically important to life? And when we look at oxygen, we breathe it in, goes inside our lungs, gets incorporated into red blood cells. I think most of us know that. Then it goes inside a protein called hemoglobin. And within that protein is something that we're all familiar with, and that's iron. And that's the magnet that binds the oxygen, carries it throughout the body, and then eventually goes inside the cell. And when it goes inside the cell, it only goes to one part of the cell, nowhere else. It goes inside the mitochondria, goes through a series of steps, and produces the body's electricity, which we call ATP. Cyanide, which kills you instantly. What it does, it blocks oxygen from getting inside the mitochondria to do its thing. The mitochondria are very similar to hydro dams. Here in British Columbia, we have hydro dams. The water is the oxygen. The water falls down the hydro dams, turns the turbines, and produces the electricity that lights up our cities. In our bodies, the mitochondria produce the electricity that allows life possible. Every single cell of the body is a factory. Each one of those factories requires electricity to function. If you lack that electricity, or you're not efficiently producing the electricity, not only do you get fatigue, but all functionality doesn't work. And so, or is compromised. And so mitochondria are the essential elements of life. They have their own DNA outside of the nucleic DNA. They're very, very unique structures, and everything relies on them. So they are the powerhouses of the human body.
So you mentioned cyanide being a factor that can, would you say, disable the mitochondria or interfere with the mitochondria?
It will interfere with the ability of the mitochondria to utilize oxygen. And the reason why I bring that up is because everybody knows that cyanide is a poison, it kills things, right? And so that's all it does. So, life in essence is about mitochondrial function and oxygen going through it. That's it. So as an example, every muscle movement is reliant on mitochondria, on that electricity. So when we die, rigor mortis sets in. Why? Because there's no ATP, there's no electricity. So the muscles can't move. So they become stiff because of that factor, no other factor. So that's, when you start thinking about it, that's mind-boggling. Wow, so these little organelles do all that? Yes, they do all that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would be some early signs of poor mitochondrial function? And aside from obviously fatigue, like generalized fatigue, what would be some of the results as well?
Well, everything. So as an example, so the patients that I treat, and so I treat, the severe disease, because all these diseases are mitochondrial based. So the symptoms: fatigue, post-exertion malaise, which is you exert yourself, you go for a mile jog, and then you are in bed because you can't recover from that. Oh, I need a couple of days just to rest. My patients sometimes take a week or a month to get over that. You have a difficult time sleeping. You get what we call unrefreshing sleep. You have cognitive dysfunction in the form of brain fog, memory loss. You have irritable bowel syndromes or symptomology of the gastrointestinal tract, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. You have pain in different parts of the body. The list can go on and on: migraine headaches, restless leg syndrome, interstitial cystitis. It's an incredible list.
Yeah.
That goes on. So there's a lot of stuff. So for all of us that don't have, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, encephalomyelitis, Lyme disease, long COVID, as we get older, we have less and less energy appears. We don't have the same energy as we did when we were 10 or 11 or 12 or 15. We can all attest to that. So what's going on? Well, what's going on is there's less mitochondria in the cells, and there's less efficiency within those mitochondria. Then the question becomes, is there things we can do to improve the functionality of mitochondria? Because if you can improve them in a complex chronic disease, then you certainly can improve it in me. I don't have a complex chronic disease, but I am fatigued and I could use more energy. Not caffeine energy, but true energy. So that's kind of the set of questions.
And so one of my questions is it normal for energy to decline as we age? It is. I imagine it's normal within a certain extent, right? But yeah, what is it that we can do? And that's one of the questions I have for you. That's the big question everybody wants an answer to. What can we do to help prevent or slow down, decelerate the aging process? What can we do to increase our energy, improve cognitive function, all of those desires that we all have?
Those are great questions, Natasha. Yeah, very good questions. And so the first question, is it a normal process that we're not as energetic as we were when we were young? Yeah, so that's called the aging process, which goes to the structure of what is aging. One of the best understandings we have in aging is mitochondria. So to better understand that, and is there something we can do? We got to understand how these things actually function. We know that oxygen goes inside of them, but how can we? Is there things we can do to help them work better? Because there's no drugs out there to help them work better. Is there some other things that we can do to them? So, and to do that, you got to understand the mitochondria a little bit better. So I do have a good understanding. I can share that with you. So first of all, what's interesting about the mitochondria is we don't inherit them from our father. We inherit them only from our mothers, which is very unique in itself. We inherit mitochondria, and we also inherit our microbiomes from our mothers. The two most essential aspects of life are inherited from our mothers, which is quite interesting. And the fact that they have their own DNA is very interesting as well. So there's two things that I call important in mitochondrial function. One, I call upregulation, and two, I call redox. So what upregulation is, if I don't eat for 2 to 3 days, guess what? I'm going to feel tired. I'm going to have brain fog. I need to eat. I'm going to pass out. So why is that? Because the mitochondria requires macro and micronutrients to do its thing, to be able to process the oxygen. So that's one. So are there things that we can do? Yes, protein is, I recommend 25 grams of protein every morning, that I make, and I recommend that to my patient, and that's usually a hit. Magnesium is really important. That's another hit that works. Coenzyme Q10 is a really important component in mitochondrial function. Something called acetyl-L-carnitine is another component that's important for mitochondrial function. And these are important components that allow the turbines to better turn, for the water to fall down the mitochondria, turn those turbines to produce electricity for the body. I've just mentioned a couple of things, and those are I call those up-regulators that give the mitochondria some of the essential macro and micronutrients it needs to do its job.
Mm-hmm.
Redox is a little bit more complex, but really gives you a really neat understanding of the mitochondria. And what redox stands for is reduction oxidation capacity. So to understand what oxidation and antioxidants are, if you slice an apple in half and you expose it to the oxygen, it will brown. That's called oxidation, rusting. If you slice another apple in half and you squeeze lemon juice on it, it doesn't brown, because the lemon juice acts as an anti-rust agent, or better known as an antioxidant. So now we can take that visual and take it to the mitochondria. And so now, but we have to use my caveat on this. This is a caveat that I put in place to better, so you're not going to find it in books, but you're going to find it here in this interview. And this is my caveat. The mitochondria cannot, under any circumstances, rust. If it rusts, it dies. If it dies, we die. So how does the mitochondria not rust? Well, it's got a couple of lemons that stop it from rusting. One of them is called glutathione, and the other one is called SOD, which stands for superoxide dismutase. To visually understand what these do, let's pretend that each mitochondria produces 100 lemons a day. That's why it doesn't rust. Now, what happens if a viral infection or a translocation from the gut into the bloodstream, which can occur under stress situations? So what separates everything in your gut from your bloodstream is actually one cell, a microscopic entity. And when those cells open up, they allow the translocation of compounds. We already know the names of these compounds. They're called DAMPs and PAMPs. I won't get into explanation of them, but we could if you wanted to. And so what happens if those go in and rot 50 of your lemons? Instead of having 100, you only have 50. What's going to happen then? You've just lost 50% of your ability to not rust. So the question is going to be, it's going to rust.
Wow.
But it can rust. Remember, I said it cannot rust under any circumstances. So how's the mitochondria going to adapt to the new reality? It's going to reduce the uptake of oxygen by 50% and reduce the output of energy by 50%. You just lost 50% of your energy capacity.
Wow.
So as we get older, do we have more free radicals, more of these things coming across, more of these things that going into the, and so is that why we're losing capacity of functionality in the mitochondria? And so the answer to that is yes. And that's why when you have a viral infection, what happens? You feel fatigued, you have achy bones, all these things are occurring because of these processes that are so critical to life. So does the mitochondria really, my goodness gracious, we can almost relate almost so many diseases to mitochondrial function.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hearing that this is quite complex. And for the average person that comes in to shop at Natural Food Pantry, the average customer that we have, somebody who's looking to prevent these complex diseases, illnesses, and increase their energy, improve their mitochondrial function, correct me if I'm wrong, what we're looking to do is increase our antioxidants, support gut health, I guess support immunity as well, reduce stress, but particularly the antioxidants, those and the micro and macronutrients that are essential for mitochondrial function, like glutathione, SOD, I think you mentioned, and there were a couple of others that you mentioned as well. Those are the particular like key.
Yeah, and there's there's groups have made these formulations, tried to put all these things in one, which is awesome. There's powders available now on the market. I'm sure you guys must have some of those available. That it's nice to have everything in one package instead of taking all those individually. And you take that, those are going to help support mitochondrial function.
Yes.
The protein, I highly recommend protein in the morning.
Protein in the morning, 25 grams, you mentioned.
25 grams. I'm telling you right now, do 25 grams. I use that Real Easy one. I really like it.
Okay, that was my next question. So you're recommending like a protein powder, protein shake?
I love it, honestly. Every morning, I've had it already. I have a little bullet. I put half of water, some frozen berries, and then 2 scoops of the Real Easy. And it thickens because of the fiber in it, the PGX, which is awesome.
I've had it, yes.
And I love it, right? And then sometimes I'll add this product that I also use. It's called Region. It's got all the Regeneralife. It's got all the different components that we talked about. You just put a little scoop of that in it, and there you go. Now you have your mitochondrial support, and you will have more energy. There's no doubt about it. Out of 10 complex patients, remember these patients have real serious.
Yeah.
Out of 10 of those, 8 will have a positive outcome by doing that alone. So
wow.
And so, but when you think about it from another perspective, if we improve mitochondrial function, we improve every function.
Yeah.
We're linking all sorts of conditions to mitochondrial dysfunction. So this is really at the ethos of human health.
Yeah.
Very exciting stuff.
It is exciting. And going back, one more question about the breakfast. Is there a certain time frame that you recommend eating breakfast? Like, some people are into the intermittent fasting and they delay their breakfast. Other people like to eat when they first get up, first thing in the morning. If they exercise in the morning, is it good to have the shake before or after? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, the reason why we call it breakfast is because you're breaking the fast.
Yeah.
Because you haven't eaten, if you have your last meal at 5 o'clock and you get up at 7, it's 13 hours without food. So, you want to nutrify the body. So I usually do recommend that people have that meal, that protein. And remember, that protein has about 120 calories. It's not very caloric. It's very little calories, but high in protein, which regulates blood sugar, supports your adrenal glands. And remember, what does DNA make? All DNA make is proteins. So in order to make proteins, what do you need? You need the essential elements of proteins.
Amino acids.
Amino acids, exactly. So that's what you're taking. So, and then you can, if you want to intermittent fast, which, I find a lot of my patients have some good results with it from an observational perspective. They take the lunch meal out. So that gives you another, 12 hours, and always have space between meals. That's important. It's another topic, but the migrating motor complex is a big application of mine. And so in order for that to work, you really need space between meals. I think that space is what reduces the bloating and the gas that some patients experience.
Excellent. And last question, what about lifestyle when it comes to mitochondrial health? So I think you mentioned stress at one point. what are your recommendations around exercise, stress
Well,
reduction,
yeah,
sleep?
stress reduction is really important. So one of the things that, all the patients that I've done in complex disease programs, I've done 10,000 of them. And one of the questions I asked, what makes it worse? Stress always makes the symptomology worse. Why is that? Because when the zebra has to run away from the lion, the sympathetic tone will kick in, which will send signals to the gut, pushing blood away from the gut into the peripheral tissues, into the zebra's legs, so it can run faster. That's why when you work out, you swell up. And when that occurs, when the gut lining loses blood, it becomes more permeable. It opens up. So those compounds are translocating or getting inside the bloodstream and attacking the mitochondria. So you want to reduce that. So how do you reduce that? Well, from a supplemental perspective, pharma-GABA is outstanding. I'm telling you, this thing it works. Okay, I call it a hit. 200 milligrams. Now you got to be really careful about which GABA you buy. So in Canada, the exclusive rights to pharma-GABA is owned by Natural Factors. So that's the only one that you can get. That's the real pharma-GABA. In the United States, if you buy US products, it's different because there's no exclusivity down there. So most companies do carry it. But in Canada, they don't. So my point is that I make these recommendations to my patients that, they go by and they go, oh my, Dr. Morello, worked great. That was awesome. And then, they come back 3 months later, it's not working anymore. And I'm taking a lot more of it. I go, you are? Well, what do you mean you're taking a lot more of it? 200 milligrams is what I recommend. Well, I'm taking 600 milligrams because I found a product that's cheaper, but it's 600 milligrams a capsule, and that's why it's not working. It really is an important component to, and I tell this to all my patients. So you have to make sure that you get the right pharma-GABA, and that downregulates the sympathetic tone and upregulates parasympathetic response. And it really does. It's a hit. So take it in the evening just to see how it works. 200 milligrams, take it in the evening. You should see a response within about 45 minutes to an hour. And then if you need it during the day, because downregulating stress, as you know, Natasha, is really, really important. It's an important component. And just to finish the question, yes, some form of exercise is stress relieving, as we know. You don't want to do too much because over exercising can also cause aging. And if you can see that, I always give this example. Look at hockey players. They're in their 20s. They look like they're in the 30s because of the stress of exercise. They're stressing those mitochondria significantly. So you have to be careful of that as well.
So it's all about finding your individual balance.
Yes, perfect.
Yes. Okay. Well, excellent conversation. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Just respect those mitochondria. They're incredible little critters.
Yeah.
That we're going to find out more and more as time goes on, and the importance of creating health for them, which will create health for the human body.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Morello. This was a great conversation. Thank you to all of the viewers. If you'd like more information on our education initiative, please visit our website at naturalfoodpantry.ca. Check out the classes and services tab of our website. And please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you, everybody. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye, Natasha. Thank you.